Platinum Games is known for making difficult games, or at least titles that have depth for above average difficulty. People who aren't into these kinds of games will either hit a wall or completely skate through on the surface of what looks like a simple game. I should know, I nearly got stuck in Bayonetta and eventually lost my steam in playing Wonderful 101. So if you're someone who this does not appeal to, do not buy Star Fox Zero. If you really want to get it despite that, you can just use the invincibility mode power-up, which is great for beginners and small children. Additionally, if you're of the mind that tilt controls can never be anything more than a gimmick, or you just don't like them, it's probably going to cause you some difficulty getting into it. Platinum Games creates that depth of difficulty in Star Fox Zero with the controls. The thing that the biggest and most popular sites have complained about is actually the game mechanic that can be the most rewarding. It's not flawless, of course, and I'll go into detail what's wrong with it, but first it needs explaining how it can be rewarding. Moving the left stick will move the R-wing and on-screen reticle, but tilting the gamepad will allow the reticle to be moved with even finer aim to hit smaller targets or those off to the sides of the screen. The right stick is used to do aerial maneuvers, boost, and air brake the R-wing. The biggest problem is that the game has some difficulty easing the player into this functionality that requires the player to jump between the gamepad screen and the TV. The introduction of the gyro wing, while frustrating to many reviewers, is an obvious step to get the player better acquainted with the tilt control aiming, without the pressure of constant forward movement and too many flying enemies chasing the player. Using the targeting mode with the tilt controls really opens up the player's ability to act like an ace pilot, and can result in some intense dogfights. Players who are aggressive and line up targets will see the most success. The only other issue I encountered with the gamepad's tilt controls was if I swung too far left or right too many times, the reticle would lose center, and I'd have to recalibrate on the fly. This was most notable in land vehicles. Personally, I dislike the need to double tap the right stick in either direction to do a barrel roll. Compared to Star Fox 64, hitting L or R felt a lot more comfortable spinning through heavy fire. In light of that, I just resorted to bobbing and weaving. The controls mostly work and will really only be an obstacle for those who don't want to make the effort, but some simple button remapping would have gone a long way. The level design is satisfactory. There are some memorable stages, but it feels like they don't stick as much since there is constant action and less quiet moments between battle, as in the older game. It's hard to soak up the scene when you're glancing down at the cockpit view on the touchscreen. The game's mission structure has the player navigating the Lilat system through a map that opens up different routes, as was the case in the older games. And, depending on the circumstances, where Fox ends up, the player will end up in different vehicles. All the vehicles feel good, but the weakest of the offerings is the R-Wing's walker mode. It's not a bad idea, and it works well, but it feels ultimately unnecessary in the grand scheme, and a bit of a disappointment with how it plays a role in the final boss. The bosses, however, are a high point. The easiest of them will just be a test of endurance, where the hardest of them will be a challenge of the player's skill and abilities. Once the technique clicks for the players, or that health bar starts dropping, overcoming the bosses is supremely satisfying. There's even some cool use of the walker mode for some of the boss fights. The graphics are sharp and pleasing, and the same can be said of the game's music and sound design. The voice acting is appropriately goofy as expected of a Star Fox game. While a single run through the main game won't take very long, there's plenty to do in Star Fox Zero. Training mode, arcade mode, unlocking new Lilat system routes, and going for gold medals offers plenty for players who like a challenge. The invincibility mode power-up activates after 3 mission failures, and it's good for less skilled players that still want to explore. The cooperative flight and shooting controls are also a nice addition. Multiplayer versus mode is sorely missed though. 2 of the game's directors said that it was the team's goal to make something new, and I would say they succeeded, if it were not for the throwbacks to the other Star Fox games that unfortunately make it hard not to compare them. What might have been a better approach, that would even fit the game's name, would be if Star Fox Zero had been about a younger Fox McCloud, dealing with the loss of his father, learning to become a pilot in different vehicles, and doing solo missions as he builds his team. No doubt making it about the Lilat War saga was a move to help the game's sales. If all you want to see is mediocrity, you will undoubtedly find it. Star Fox Zero is like that old-fashioned kind of game where your level of satisfaction is directly proportional to the level of effort you invest. If you don't want to earn your satisfaction, then this isn't the right kind of game for you. Maybe you'd rather walk through an empty building and get narrated at. I hear those are very trendy these days and don't require any of that pesky skill. Anyways, take care. Until next time.
Good luck.